The rain pounded against the cracked window, each drop hitting the rotting wooden floor like a hammer to the heart. Inside the dim apartment, the weak yellow light flickered, casting long shadows across the walls. Arthur sat motionless at the empty kitchen table, his trembling hands clutching a contract he hadn't yet signed. Outside, the city kept moving, but for him, this night felt like the end of everything. The door burst open. Evelyn walked in, her face cold as ice, mascara smeared not by the rain, but by the decision already carved deep into her eyes. No greeting, no hesitation. Only a thick yellow envelope slammed onto the wooden table like a death sentence. "Listen carefully, Arthur." Her voice cut like a blade. "I've had enough. You are nothing but a failure, a man who will never amount to anything. I've wasted the best years of my life standing beside someone who is never good enough, never wealthy enough, never a real man." Arthur lifted his head, lips trembling as if to speak, but Evelyn raised her hand sharply, silencing him as one would dismiss a beggar on the street. Don't make more promises. I don't need fantasies. I need a real life. And you are not in it." Thunder split the night sky, echoing the sound of Arthur's world collapsing. He stared at the woman who once vowed to love him forever as she walked out the door. Her heels struck the floor with each step, like nails sealing the coffin of their past. The door slammed shut, and Arthur was left alone, with the darkness, the storm, and a shattered heart. Then, his laptop screen lit up. A number appeared, a number powerful enough to change everything. But Arthur said nothing, not to Evelyn, not to anyone. The narrator's voice, low and haunting, filled the silence. "When the one who promised to love you forever walks away because of poverty, would you stay silent or let the truth speak? If you were Arthur, what would you do?" Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow this channel so you won't miss the shocking stories that lie ahead. The weeks before the storm had already revealed the cracks. Their apartment smelled faintly of damp wood and reheated leftovers. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, and the heater clanked through the winter nights but never truly warmed the room. Arthur spent his days hunched over a battered laptop, his eyes red from endless nights of coding and planning. Stacks of unpaid bills sat like silent judges on the counter. Evelyn's sighs grew louder with every passing day. Once, she used to encourage him, placing gentle hands on his shoulders, whispering that his dreams mattered. But over time, the warmth in her touch turned to ice. Her patience frayed with every late rent notice, every rejected bank loan, every dinner of instant noodles served in chipped bowls. She began dressing up more often, lingering too long in front of the mirror, as if preparing for a stage where Arthur didn't belong. When friends invited them to dinners or parties, Arthur always declined. He couldn't afford it. Evelyn's smile would stiffen, her excuses rehearsed, but her eyes betrayed the humiliation she felt. In those moments, she no longer saw a husband. She saw a chain dragging her down. Arthur, blind to the growing distance, believed his sacrifices would be worth it. He whispered promises into the night. "Just a little longer, Evelyn. Just a little longer, and everything will change." But promises cannot fill empty stomachs, cannot buy back lost youth, cannot shield a heart from resentment. By the time the rain came crashing down that night, Evelyn had already made her choice. The marriage wasn't simply poor, it was poisoned. Evelyn stood there, her figure sharp against the dimly lit room, her eyes burning with something far colder than anger, contempt. She shoved the thick envelope across the table toward Arthur, her voice flat and final. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed. All that's left is your signature." Arthur gripped the edge of the table, his voice cracked and desperate. "Evelyn, You don't have to do this. I'm so close. Just a little more time and I can— Enough! Evelyn cut him off, her hand slicing the air as if swatting away a beggar. Do you think I haven't heard those promises 100 times? 5 years, Arthur. 5 years of poverty, humiliation, waiting for your fantasy to come true. I don't believe anymore. I don't love anymore. Arthur froze, his eyes fixed on the envelope, the red letters screaming divorce decree. Evelyn paced across the small apartment, her heels striking the cracked linoleum like nails into a coffin. Then she stopped, facing him directly, a faint, cruel smile playing on her lips. Maybe you should know. I've been seeing someone else. Victor Langston. The name fell into the silence like a death sentence. He's everything you'll never be. Successful, powerful, wealthy, a real man. Arthur swallowed hard, forcing out the words that felt like glass in his throat. How long? Long enough to realize I made a mistake choosing you, Evelyn answered coldly, without a flicker of regret. The rain hammered harder against the windows, merciless and unrelenting. Inside, Arthur sat motionless, his world collapsing around him. The only sound that remained was the truth echoing in his mind. The woman he loved had not only left him, she had trampled on every year they had shared. That night, Arthur sat alone long after Evelyn's footsteps faded into silence. The apartment seemed emptier than ever. Every crack in the walls, every unpaid bill, every broken promise now screamed louder than the storm outside. He poured himself a glass of cheap whiskey, the kind that burned going down but never numbed the pain. Hours slipped by in a haze of smoke and regret. Images of Evelyn's words replayed endlessly in his mind. Failure. Not a real man. Mistake. Each one stabbed deeper, hollowing him out from the inside. At one point, he slumped onto the floor, his face buried in his hands, whispering to no one. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really am nothing, but in the suffocating darkness, his laptop screen still glowed. The deal he had fought for, sacrificed for, bled for, was right there. A number that could rewrite his entire story. Arthur forced himself to his feet, his reflection in the window a ghost of the man he once was. And then something shifted. The tears dried. The trembling stopped. A fire he thought was gone flickered back to life in his eyes. If she wants proof, he muttered, his voice steadier now, then I'll give the world proof. That night, Arthur didn't sleep. The broken man died with the storm. By morning, a different Arthur emerged, silent, determined, and ready to rise. In the months that followed, Arthur all but vanished from the world. He sold his rusty old car, pawned off every possession that still held value, and gathered every last dollar he had left to fund his software project. By day, he knocked on doors of companies one after another, carrying thick binders of plans, only to be met with cold refusals. By night, he buried himself in the empty apartment, typing line after line of code, fixing bugs until his eyes burned red like embers. There were moments when the weight nearly broke him, like the night his prototype collapsed, erasing months of work in a single glitch. Arthur sat there in the dark, a cold cup of coffee by his side, his chest heavy with despair. But somehow he rose again, starting over from scratch. He learned to fail, and to build failure into his foundation. Each rejection sharpened him. Each setback forced him to refine, to innovate, to endure. Slowly, inch by inch, the tide began to turn. A small firm signed a trial contract. Then a larger company followed. Word spread quickly. Arthur's technology was unlike anything the industry had seen. The press called it the next explosion in the tech market. And when the deal with Aegis Dynamics was sealed, tens of millions of dollars flowed into Arthur's account. That deal became the spark that ignited an empire. Within months, Arthur's platform disrupted entire sectors: finance, logistics, even healthcare, reshaping the way businesses operated. Investors lined up at his door. Venture capitalists fought for a seat at his table. Forbes called him the man who rose from ashes to rewrite the future. He was invited to conferences where CEOs who once ignored him now waited in line just to shake his hand. The same world that had dismissed him as a dreamer was now kneeling at the feet of his vision. The man once dismissed as a failure had become the architect of a revolution. Arthur was no longer the hollow figure hunched over a laptop in a damp apartment. He had become fire itself, burning down every doubt, every insult, every chain that once held him captive. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself a smile, not of revenge, but of vindication. While Arthur was building his empire brick by brick, Evelyn wrapped herself in what looked like glory. Her social media overflowed with snapshots of luxury: trips to Paris, Venice, the Maldives. Diamonds glittered on her wrist, champagne sparkled in crystal glasses, and candlelit dinners painted her life as a fairy tale. Every picture, every caption was a blade, meant to stab at the memory of the man she once called a husband, a man she now branded a failure. But behind the shimmer, the truth was far darker. Victor, the man Evelyn believed was her dream escape, never truly valued her. At corporate galas, he held her hand only as an accessory, a trophy for others to admire. Behind closed doors, his gaze turned cold, his words sharper than knives. To him, Evelyn was nothing more than an ornament, a piece of jewelry that lost its shine the moment it demanded attention. Her opinions, her desires, her small attempts at affection, each one was brushed aside with a sigh, a frown, or a mocking laugh. Evelyn had traded freedom and love for status and wealth, only to find herself living in a prison lined with silk curtains and marble floors. In the spotlight, she smiled for the cameras, but in the darkness, Evelyn knew the truth. Her new life was nothing more than a gilded cage. 1 year after Evelyn slammed the door behind her, the world had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Arthur's name now appeared across the covers of major financial magazines. Forbes hailed him as the man redefining technology. The Wall Street Journal praised him as the new visionary of the century. Aegis Dynamics, the company Arthur had built from ashes, was exploding in growth. Its stock soared, and corporate giants scrambled for a seat at his table. In a tailored suit, Arthur sat in a glass-walled office towering over the very city that once broke him. His gaze no longer carried the tremors of yesterday, only the calm certainty of a man who finally knew his place in the world. Meanwhile, Victor Langston began to falter. A string of failed investments, markets turning against him. Langston Group's stock tumbling downward like a free fall. Partners pulled away. The media buzzed with headlines. Victor Langston losing grip on power. As Arthur entered boardrooms with the presence of a leader, Victor was left scrambling, desperate to keep his empire afloat. The contrast was cruel and unmistakable. The man once branded a failure now stood at the summit, while the man chosen to replace him teetered on the edge of collapse. Arthur hadn't even lifted a hand against him yet, but his very existence had already shifted the balance of power. One morning, an ivory envelope with golden embossing appeared on Arthur's desk. Inside was a wedding invitation. Evelyn's name was written in elegant script, accompanied by the formal words, "You are cordially invited." But what made Arthur pause wasn't the ornate card. It was the handwritten note tucked inside. No hard feelings. Come and see what a real wedding looks like. Perhaps you'll finally learn what success truly means. Signed simply, Evelyn. Arthur read it slowly, the corner of his mouth curving into a smile, cold, almost dangerous. She still thought he was the trembling man in a shabby apartment, begging for her approval. What Evelyn didn't know was that for months, Arthur had been quietly buying up shares of Langston Group, and on the very day she walked down the aisle, Victor would realize that his empire was already crumbling beneath his feet. Arthur placed the invitation gently on the desk, his eyes glinting with steel. "Very well," he whispered. "I'll come. But not to witness love, to reveal the truth." The wedding of Evelyn and Victor was held at the Grand Imperial Hotel, the most opulent venue in the city. Hundreds of powerful guests, business moguls, politicians, and media figures filled the marble hall, their voices echoing beneath glittering chandeliers. Violins played softly, candles flickered against crystal glasses brimming with champagne. Evelyn emerged from the bridal suite in a gown worth a fortune, her eyes sparkling with pride. She was certain today would be her ultimate victory. But outside, a convoy of sleek black SUVs lined up in perfect formation before the hotel entrance. Doors swung open in unison. Men in black suits stepped out, earpieces glinting, moving with the precision of a professional security detail. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Who is it? A foreign dignitary? An international tycoon? And then, from the final car, Arthur stepped out. A charcoal bespoke suit hugged his frame, a platinum watch caught the chandelier's light, and every stride he took carried a weight that made the crowd part instinctively. Gasps erupted, whispers surged like a wave. "Arthur Harris, CEO of Aegis Dynamics." Cameras flashed. Every eye in the room turned toward him. At the altar, Victor froze. Sweat beaded at his temple, his hand trembling as he gripped Evelyn's bouquet like a lifeline. The Langston Group board members seated in the front row exchanged uneasy glances. They knew exactly what this meant. As Arthur entered the grand hall, guests abandoned the bride and groom, flocking instead toward him, shaking his hand, slipping him business cards, bowing in respect. The wedding that was supposed to showcase Evelyn and Victor's triumph had transformed into a coronation of Arthur. And when Evelyn's eyes finally met his across the room, the pride she had built over the past year collapsed in an instant. Her perfect day had just become her greatest humiliation. Amid the lavish wedding that had turned into a celebration of Arthur, Evelyn could no longer hold on to her proud smile. She quietly slipped away from the crowd, stepping onto the balcony where the city lights stretched endlessly into the night. Her heart pounded wildly, her hands clutching the edge of her bridal veil as she whispered in despair, "This can't be. This can't be the Arthur I once knew." The sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Arthur stood there, cold, commanding, his eyes deep enough to pierce straight through her soul. Evelyn broke down, tears smudging her flawless makeup, her voice trembling. "Arthur, I was wrong. You're the man I truly need. Please give me another chance. We can start over, can't we?" Arthur looked at her for a long moment, neither anger nor pity in his gaze. Only the calm of a man who had already walked through the storm. His voice was low, steady, final. "Evelyn, I did love you once. But the woman I loved abandoned me the moment I fell. And now, I love my peace more." With that, Arthur turned and walked away, leaving Evelyn to collapse onto the cold marble floor in her expensive gown, alone under the glow of the city lights. In that moment, Evelyn understood. She hadn't lost Arthur. She had lost herself. The wedding ended, but its echo would haunt Evelyn for the rest of her life. She had entered marriage with Victor seeking glory, yet all she found was disdain and a humiliation that could never be washed away. Meanwhile, Arthur had done nothing except become the man he had always believed he could be. Arthur lost the woman who once vowed to walk with him to the end of the road, but in return, he found something far more precious: peace within his own soul. He didn't need revenge through cruel words. He didn't need to prove himself by tearing others down, because his success and his serenity were the strongest answers of all. Evelyn lost Arthur, lost love, lost even the respect of society. But her greatest tragedy wasn't losing a man, it was losing herself. Life does not punish us with poverty. It punishes us with the wrong choices we make when tested. And sometimes, silence is the sweetest form of revenge. So let me ask you this. If you were Arthur, on that night, with Evelyn on her knees begging for forgiveness, would you have given her a second chance? Would you have taken her back, or walked away, as Arthur did? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because everyone has a different answer to betrayal. And if you want to hear more gripping, emotional, and unexpected stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. There are many more real-life tales and powerful lessons waiting just ahead.